Welcome to my presentation titled Professional Standards for Teachers, What have been the successes and challenges of their implementation in Australia? Firstly, thanks to the French Centre for Education Studies for their invitation to present to you and for their support and guidance throughout this process. So, to orientate you to my presentation, I'll begin by positioning professional standards as a global education phenomenon and discuss the research on the aims and intentions of implementing professional standards for teachers, highlighting the conflicting viewpoints. Then I'll explore professional standards in the Australian context, what these look like, how they're used, and the supports that are provided to teachers to enable them to engage with them. I'll also highlight the issue of how professional standards attend to the technical and neglect the non-cognitive domains of a teacher's capabilities. And I'll explain how professional standards relate to professional learning for teachers. Throughout this process, I will present the successes and the challenges of professional standards implementation as has occurred in Australia. As is traditional in Australia, I'll firstly read an acknowledgement of country to respect the land and culture of Indigenous Australians. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I sit, the Gubbi Gubbi people, from the beautiful colours of Rainbow Beach to my north and the magnificent glasshouse mountains of Beerwah, Tibrogargan and Beerburrum to my south. These are places of cultural significance, featuring in long-held Dreamtime stories of the traditional owners of the land. I honour the beauty in these lands and the stories and wisdom of the elders past, present and emerging, and I seek to walk together in the spirit of reconciliation. So to begin. Firstly, I want to briefly explain the ancestry of professional standards for teachers. The concept of professional standards can be traced back to the United States, where in 1946, the director of the National Commission on Teacher Education and Professional Standards called for the profession to create its own professional standards before they were imposed on them. The image on this slide here shows that at the core of professional standards lies the industrial efficiency model, where education is aimed at producing human capital, which sits alongside the concept of the knowledge economy, where human potential is realised through productive outcomes. Their positioning as drivers of educational change has led to various interpretations of the aims and intentions of professional standards and various claims for their potential outcomes. As with many constructs in education, there are opposing perspectives on professional standards. Those in favour, well, they talk about them providing specific knowledge and that they act as an ethos to guide teacher actions and values, whilst others in that camp also make connections between professional standards and quality teaching. Conversely, while others argue that the link between professional standards and teacher quality is actually an unproven claim, and that professional standards enable a climate of performativity through comparison, judgment and control, whilst measuring compliance and accountability. So as you can see, contention is rife about the place, value and form of professional standards and how they should and could apply to teaching. With two sobering perspectives indicating that professional standards are not the magic bullet to solve educational issues, but then who would argue against having professional standards of some sort? One organisation pivotal to the global push for professional standards for teachers is the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, known as the OECD. In 1994, the OECD positioned itself as a global educational leader in their report entitled Performance Standards in Education in Search for Quality. Since this time, OECD objectives and initiatives have dominated educational policy direction around the globe. Never more so than with the introduction of the Programme for International Student Assessment, known as PISA tests. Upwards of 80 nations now use the PISA test as a benchmark for the ability of their 15-year-old students in reading, science and mathematics. Each nation is then positioned on what we might call a League of Nations, where those in the lofty top 5 positions sit very comfortably and are admired by the media and governments for their demonstration of apparent educational success. The issue here is that politicians take reactive steps and use the PISA results as an opportunity to validate implementing new policy to control the quality of teachers and the teaching that occurs in their nation, as was seen in Japan, where PISA shock caused them to abandon educational programs due to a perceived decline in PISA results. So with the OECD promoting the use of professional standards for teachers as a means of improving teacher quality, it's a very alluring promise that then leads nations to conforming to OECD perspectives in the hope of receiving that PISA glory. With the OECD promoting the use of professional standards, two clear pathways have formed in their application around the globe. They've been viewed as either regulatory or developmental. Regulatory standards are given to the profession. They're used in accreditation and certification for teacher qualifications and then entry into teaching. Regulatory professional standards are said to provide transparency and consistency and highlight shared aims. On the other hand, developmental standards are internally driven by teachers for teachers. They provide for teacher autonomy to make decisions around what they need in their context, and in doing so, that enables authentic teacher learning to occur. Moving on to the Australian context, on the back of perceived low PISA scores, a national approach to professional standards was embarked on at the end of 2010. Labelled as the single biggest priority for the then Labor government, the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers, known as the APST, were developed by the newly formed Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership, known as AITSL. The APST were developed in consultation with key stakeholders and introduced in early 2011. Rather than opting for a regulatory or a developmental approach to professional standards, Australia has gone their own way and adopted a hybrid approach to professional standards for teachers. The hybrid model considers the competing literature on professional standards, and in Australia, key academics acknowledged that the challenge for professional standards success would be in bringing teachers on board. Consequently, Australia decided to create a hybrid set of professional standards that meet its regulatory and developmental needs. As you can see, 3 of AITSL's 4 aims for the APST are regulatory in nature. The first of these aims ensures that all initial teacher education programme content, positioned for example in university programmes of study, is aligned with the APST. The second aim ensures that pre-service teachers enrolled in these programmes must prove they've achieved competence in the APST to become eligible to graduate, seek teacher registration in their state, and then become employed as a teacher. The third regulatory aim provides transparency to the expectations for teachers transitioning between career stages. With the introduction of the APST came the requirement for initial teacher education providers to ensure course content aligned with the APST, and in more recent years, even more detailed programme standards have been implemented. This form of initial teacher education regulation involves rigorous and onerous accreditation and re-accreditation of all course content, with a significant time and financial impost on these organisations. Additionally, state regulators are also heavily burdened with the duty of ensuring compliance for ITE programme content, teacher registration, and transitioning between career stages. Other challenges with regulatory standards include that teachers are known to use them as a box-ticking exercise, or they see them solely as a compliance mechanism, which challenges the integrity of the APST. As you can see at the bottom of this slide, AITSL included one developmental aim for their professional standards, for it to inform a teacher's professional learning, and I'll return to this theme shortly. First, I want to briefly explain the architecture of the APST. On the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see there are 4 career stages. The first, the graduate career stage, is the level where pre-service teachers need to demonstrate achievement, and this level resides in initial teacher education programs of study within tertiary education providers such as universities, as previously stated. Then the proficient, the highly accomplished, and the lead teacher career stages all sit with practicing and employed teachers. The overarching element of the APST are these three professional domains: professional practice, knowledge and engagement. And then inside of those domains sit the 7 standards. On the far right side of the screen, you'll see the individual 37 APST focus area headings and their associated descriptors that sit within these 7 standards. The difference between the APST at each career stage sits within the individual APST descriptor. In the example shown here, the focus area for APST 1.1 at the top of the table remains the same for each career stage. It acts as a heading. Then beneath these sit the APST descriptors for each career stage, and these expectations are gradually increased at each career stage. At the graduate level, it's knowing and understanding the descriptor content, through to leading colleagues in the lead teacher descriptor. The defining qualities of the APST are that they provide a clear skill set of technical knowledges and abilities that are required by teachers, and importantly, they provide a shared language with which to communicate about expectations, actions and future goals. And in the case of the graduate career stage, they provide the minimum standard for teachers. By the end of their programme of study in initial teacher education, pre-service teachers must be able to demonstrate across multiple APST aligned assessments that they have achieved the minimum standard for each of the APST descriptors. These assessments mostly form a representation of a pre-service teacher's knowledge and understanding, because there are several APST that will be difficult to achieve if they require a demonstration of practice, the ability to do it. As shown in the example here, pre-service teachers would struggle to guarantee those opportunities on their professional experiences in school to support the full participation of students with disabilities. There just might not be the opportunity. Instead, pre-service teachers are expected to demonstrate a broad knowledge and understanding of the legislative requirements and teaching strategies that support this particular descriptor. Within the APST descriptors, there is a strong focus on the cognitive elements of a teacher's work, and this presents issues for developing well-rounded teachers. A wide body of literature identifies the specific non-cognitive skills of resilience, self-efficacy, interpersonal skills, adaptability and motivation, all of which are shown to support a teacher's capacity to enact what they know about teaching. These important skills that support a teacher's effectiveness as a practitioner are not positioned in the standards. Essentially, a teacher's knowledge is enhanced by their non-cognitive capabilities. They act as critical partners in a holistic approach to teaching. We know that non-cognitive skills would likely support teachers to achieve greater levels of expertise and accomplishment, but they are not held within the APST. Importantly, without their presence, pre-service teachers come to see that the technical skills of a teacher's job are valued above all. After all, the APST are the benchmark for teacher quality. Here, pre-service teachers learn what is identified as the baseline knowledge of a teacher's job, what works well, rather than develop the ability to critically consider creative, contextual solutions. Not only does the elevation of technical skills at the expense of non-cognitive skills impact on a teacher's ability to critically consider creative solutions, but it also polarises teachers into those who are identified by the teaching standards as good, right and strong, and those that are bad, weak and wrong. This heavy focus on the APST as the technical aspects of a teacher's role has potential deficits when it comes to supporting teachers to meet the APST career stages via professional learning, the fourth of AITSL's 4 aims. AITSL provided a definition for what constitutes professional learning, and they identified 2 forms, formal and informal. On the one hand, formal professional learning is decided by others, it's required in some way by your programme of study if you're a pre-service teacher at university, or by your school leadership if you're a practising teacher in school. It would relate directly and explicitly to the APSTs. On the other hand, we have informal professional learning, and this is less governed because there's no checks or balances and no regulation guiding it. The teacher needs to know and understand how to manage their own professional learning, to be able to reflect on their learning needs at any given moment in time. This form of professional learning not only relies on trust that teachers will reside in a state of continual improvement, but it also requires that teachers know and understand how to manage their own professional learning. Both formal and informal professional learning are provided for by AITSL, who've established a broad bank of support materials online for teachers to determine their own professional learning needs. This includes a self-assessment tool where teachers can identify their capabilities and their needs against specific APST descriptors at their career stage, as well as resources that support professional learning in specific APST descriptors, such as videos of practice. There are no details on how well these are used by teachers, but recent data published by AITSL reported that 74% of teachers used the resources in the previous 12 months in some capacity. This same report indicated that 97% of teachers were aware of the APST, although AITSL didn't provide data on what constituted awareness and how many teachers actively use the APST to manage their informal professional learning. However, one of the main issues with the APST for pre-service teachers is that there is no requirement for them to learn how to manage their own informal professional learning, with the APST at the graduate career stage only requiring them to understand the rationale for professional learning tied to improve student outcomes. In fact, recent research identified that 80% of pre-service teachers could not correctly identify what was meant by professional learning, and my own research identified that only 4% were using the APST for their informal professional learning. With the expectation that pre-service teachers will move into the profession as competent professional learners able to manage their own informal professional learning needs, there's certainly a challenge in supporting the professional learning capabilities of pre-service teachers to enable them to be motivated and empowered to act independently as professional learners when teachers in schools. When we look at the data for practicing teachers, the challenges for AITSL become even clearer. In 2012, AITSL established the Highly Accomplished and Lead Teacher Certification, known as HALT certification, for teachers at those top two career stages. In AITSL's words, it was introduced to provide teachers with an opportunity to reflect on their practice and gain recognition for their expertise. Importantly, it was also positioned by AITSL as being a reliable indicator of teacher quality. Yet, by 2022, out of a workforce of some 307,000 teachers, only 1,200 had received HALT certification. This issue becomes even sharper when we see that 90% of teachers don't believe they gain anything from professional learning, and that many merely play the game with professional standards to appease their school leadership. The challenges faced by AITSL lies also in the financial impost of enabling teachers to transition between the career stages, as this might be linked with promotion and consequent remuneration, and with providing teachers with the necessary time to generate their applications to transition from one career stage to another. With these difficulties in mind, the challenge for AITSL to reach 10,000 HALT certified teachers by the end of 2025, that remains to be seen. And so, to review the key points of my presentation, AITSL delivered the APST in 2011 as directed by federal government as a means of creating transformational change to our education system. 3 of the 4 aims have been achieved, with high levels of regulatory practice now tied to what is taught, practiced and assessed in initial teacher education programs. Additionally, achievement of each of the APST descriptors is a requirement to gain teacher registration in your state of residence so that you can be employed as a teacher. Teachers must also use the APST as a framework to demonstrate achievement of specific teaching practices, enabling transition and potential promotion through the APST career stages. The fourth aim of establishing professional standards for formal and informal professional learning of teachers is partly achieved through the formal processes held within ITE programs and schools, where formal professional learning is provided. But informal professional learning is a greater challenge. It requires time and money to enable teachers to have the time and energy to invest in their own professional futures. To conclude, in Australia, we are situated in a paradoxical situation, perhaps one that you might call a tug of war between the regulatory and the developmental aims for the Australian professional standards for teachers. Those working with them are tasked with trying to find ways to enable these competing forces to work together, to pull in the same direction rather than opposing directions, because essentially what has happened here is that the reality of the tremendous pull of the regulatory aims of the APST supersedes any attempts to find strength in the developmental approaches. And this leaves little hope for teacher agency that could otherwise have been garnered. Australia now needs to identify ways to empower teachers to engage with informal professional learning. And finally, I might offer that Australia presents itself as a cautionary tale that any nation wishing to embark on a professional standards journey should be willing, as Hargreaves stated, to open themselves to the scrutiny that such endeavours bring. Thank you again for this opportunity to present to you about professional standards and the Australian context, and I wish you well on your journey, whether it be with professional standards or otherwise.